It has been proven in numerous experiments that thoughts are capable of influencing matter, which means what we think has an enormous impact on the world around us, even if we are not aware of it. Thought is a tremendously powerful energy that can change both living and non-living organisms and even affect the way machines work. When we have this knowledge, we assume a great responsibility, for then we should be aware of every thought we have. Everything that emanates from our mind has the possibility of becoming reality. We should therefore be careful about what we think and try to keep ourselves in a state of consciousness that is beneficial to us. The most important element in this process is the observing consciousness, which makes it possible for something to become reality. All this leads us to the conclusion that our thoughts create the future conditions of our lives. But can our thoughts also influence or change the past? Within the limited conception we have of the timeline, the past is immutable. What has happened cannot be changed, and there is no way to access time that has already passed. But it could be that this idea is not so correct, and time is not what we have believed it to be until now. If simple attention or observation is able to change matter by the only means of intention, then we can change it at will. Following the conducted studies, it means that we become creative and influential beings. This method, called psychokinesis, shows that intentional mental influence produces results regardless of distance and time. Apparently, the power of our thoughts transcends time and space. Most amazing of all, the effective use of intention can be reinforced with practice and easily learned. In fact, we do it on many occasions in our lives without even realizing it, and according to the research we will discuss below, the results multiply as the number of people who agree on the same goal increases. Best-selling author Lynn McTaggart is one of the foremost experts on this new science and consciousness. In her book, The Intentions Experiment, she describes how thoughts and the use of intentions can change future circumstances, and also, what may sound almost unbelievable, the past. One of the most important experiments was conducted by Leonard Leibovici. Leibovici is a professor of internal medicine and an expert on infectious diseases in Israel, who is passionate about mathematics and statistics. His enthusiasm for statistics is such that he has since come to believe that diseases can be predicted through mathematical models. In 2000, Leibovici conducted an experiment to determine the healing effects of prayer. In a hospital, he did a study with patients affected by infectious diseases. He applied a rigorous study protocol to 3,393 adults who had developed blood poisoning during their stay at Rabin Medical Center. During this double-blind study, neither the patients nor the medical staff knew they were participating in an experiment. Leibovici randomly divided the patients into two groups, an experimental or treatment group and a control group, to compare results. The names of all patients in the treatment group were then given to a group that prayed for those patients. No prayers were said for the control group. After some time, the medical records of the treatment group were compared with those of the control group, and it was found that the number of deaths in the treatment group had decreased, but most importantly, the two study groups differed in the decrease in fevers and length of stay in the hospital. The inflammation receded more quickly in the people who were prayed for. They had a shorter period of fever, spent fewer days in the hospital, and recovered faster than the patients in the control group. This experiment in itself does not seem very earth-shattering, but as we have already noted, the willful intent of our thoughts and feelings, when directed towards something concrete, changes the outcome. Prayer works in the same way because it is the same process. However, the most incredible thing about this study was that those who said the prayers were not praying for those people who had become infected in 2000, the year of the experiment, but without knowing it, for patients who had been hospitalized in this hospital between 1990 and 1996. How was it possible that the prayers performed in 2000 could be shown to improve the health of those patients who had been admitted 4 to 10 years earlier? This study was published the following year in the British Medical Journal, mocking the experiment and questioning the results Leibovici had obtained. He was ridiculed by his international colleagues, and one critic even suggested that if it were possible to overcome the timeline so easily, anyone could go back and kill Hitler to avoid a tragedy. However, this experiment, which seemed to break apart the notion of the physical and temporal worlds, met with wide approval from psychic faculty who had already encountered the same results. The fact is that Leonard Leibovici had turned conventional science upside down, and his idea of time and space, consciousness and prayer had eventually proven that one could pray in the present and change the past. Actually, the group responsible for the prayers had intended that the patients assigned to them become healthier or completely cured. But without knowing it, they changed the past, which means that no matter what time we are in, we always have the power from the present to consciously change our lives. We must add that the experiments carried out by Robert Jahn and Brenda Dunn of the PEAR laboratory in Princeton, engaged in the study of parapsychology, have led to the conclusion that consciousness focused on an event can provide the same results, both in the past and in the future, forcing us to reconsider our conception of the timeline. In fact, the effects were much more apparent when the thought moved outside of time and space. In addition, the German physicist Helmut Schmidt conducted an experiment to see whether a human being can influence the results of a machine. To do this, he recorded on a tape a clicking sound with a random frequency that could be heard randomly in either the left or the right ear. In other words, both the number of clicks and the ear used to hear them were random, and the statistical values between the two ears were close to 50%. Moreover, he recorded the tapes in such a way that not even Schmidt himself could listen to them so as not to influence the result. Among the recordings, he separated a group of control tapes on which no influence was to be exerted and another group of experimental tapes that were kept locked away. The participants, medical students, were instructed to make a point of listening to more sounds with the left ear. The result was surprising. After comparing the control recordings, in which sounds were almost equally distributed between the two ears, with the subject's recordings, Schmidt found that 55% of the tapes contained more sounds in the left ear than in the right ear. Schmidt's explanations for these results, however, were particularly noteworthy. He believed that the volunteers had not intentionally altered tapes after they were recorded, but that their consciousness had gone back in time and altered the tapes at the moment they were recorded. The point was not that the volunteers changed the past, but that they could have influenced the outcome with their intention. Schmidt continued his experiments for over 20 years, including with participants who were experts in martial arts and had a particularly high level of mental concentration. The result confirmed his theories. All these experiments completely confuse our idea of the physical world. We see the past, present, and future simultaneously. Perhaps this is why many researchers claim that we can only change the past or the future from the present. In the end, the only thing that matters is the present moment, the now.